Who do you say that I am? I can just imagine that question hanging in the air. The disciples fidgeting, not quite sure what to say. It was really quite the question. Jesus had just asked who the people said he was, and the disciples had been able to give the easy answers. They were just reporting back what they'd heard, after all. Some say you're Elijah or one of the prophets. But then when he asked, who do you say that I am? Well, that was different, wasn't it? That was asking for a personal revelation on their part. The disciples couldn't say, well, we think you're pretty cool. We think that you're the teacher. So they shuffled and they looked at their feet for a bit. Until finally, as will always happen in any group, someone got tired of the silence. And Peter finally spoke up. And I'm so glad that it was Peter. He was always so impetuous. He was the one who would always throw things out in front of the group. And finally, when he couldn't bear the silence anymore, he said, "You're the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And you know he said it with force and with vigor. He didn't just mumble it. And how can you mumble that? And there it was. The answer that the other disciples had probably known, had probably been waiting to speak themselves, but even in the company of other disciples had been too timid to voice. There it was. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Simon, Peter, declared it to be true. And got his nickname Peter handed to him in the process. Peter, coming from the Greek Petros, or rock. Upon this rock I will build my church, Jesus said. And we often get confused with what Jesus was saying there. You know, our Roman Catholic brothers and sisters like to point to Peter as being the first pope, the rock upon which Christ built the church. And, you know, historically that's true. But the rock that Jesus is referring to is not the man, but is that statement of faith. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. Upon this declaration I will build my church. But you know, Peter's statement of faith was also a statement of courage. His statement was something that set him apart from the other disciples, not because they didn't believe it, but because they weren't ready to declare it. And Peter, Simon, wasn't so concerned about fitting in with the crowd. He was much more concerned about giving the honest response of his heart. That's what the message with the children today is really all about. About not being conformed to this world, but being transformed by the renewing of our minds. In a way, though, Simon Peter had really lucked out. All he had to do, well, at least at that point, getting crucified, that came later. But at that point, all he had to do was to declare his belief in front of the other disciples. I mean, how difficult could that really be? To take a stance of faith in front of other people who almost certainly agreed with him. Okay, maybe it was still pretty hard, wasn't it? Even in church, we're sometimes uncomfortable talking about our faith. Even among the believers, we're still sometimes a little antsy talking about what God is doing in our lives. It's much easier to get together and to sing some hymns and to listen to a sermon, to say some prayers, and just assume we're all in it together. And I'm not going to mention my faith much. Thank you. Yeah. Maybe we can take a lesson from Peter. That lesson that declares our faith even in the company of the believers. And let that be a first step for our journey that takes us in faith out into the world, where we can share our faith in more than just tweets. Faith in the world is a hard thing. In the book of Exodus, with that long narrative that we heard this morning of the Hebrew midwives, Shiphrah and Puah. Frankly, I think we should have more girls named Shiphrah and Puah. I mean, they should be like famous names, because these are the women who really saved Israel. These are the women who, despite the fact that they were given a direct order from Pharaoh to kill those little boys, made up some cockamamie story about those tough Hebrew women. No, they don't experience labor pains. They just give birth and get right back to it. Yeah. Sorry, I work in a hospital. Jewish women, just like anybody else. So Shiphrah and Puah, there they were, lying through their teeth, straight into the face of Pharaoh, in order to save those children. And then, when they were told that may not be anything you can do, I'm still going to get those boys, and the decree went out that all of the baby boys should be cast into the Nile to become alligator chow, crocodile chow. And that a lot of them went in. But there was that one woman who was so in love with her baby, who was so in love with the promise that God had given to the people, that after caring for him and hushing him for 3 months, built a boat basket and had him placed in the reeds. It's quite the story. A story of love, a story of dedication, a story of craftiness, to make sure that when Pharaoh's daughter came down, that there was the baby. The one who we don't know the name, but as he was drawn out from the water, he was called Moses. The one who was drawn from the reeds. That's really the story of our faith. Craftiness, faithfulness, and love. The love of a mother, the love of a big sister, Miriam, who ran interference for her baby brother to make sure that he would be found and cared for. So many stories of faith. Let me tell you another one. The year was 1943. And a woman named Ellen Nielsen took a stand that was every bit as courageous as that Shiphrah and Puah took. 1943. Nazi-occupied Denmark. And Ellen took 2 little boys, Jewish boys, under her wing, and helped smuggle them to Sweden. She and a huge number of her fellow Danes resisted the power of the Third Reich, smuggling over 7,000 Jews, the entire Jewish population of Denmark, to safety. 1943. Let me tell you another story. 2014. Along the U.S.-Mexico border. We've all heard the stories on the news. The stories of the wave of unaccompanied children coming to the borders. fleeing their homes in Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Mexico. Fleeing violence, looking for a new life. And of course, we've also heard the reaction that our nation has had. Those on the one hand who wave American flags as weapons, who scream at busloads of children, send them home. But there's another story. A story of people like you and like me who have been giving time to go and offer care for these children. For once they cross the border, they're not being welcomed into homes, they're instead being placed into detention centers. And so, church members, people of faith, are going to these children and offering care, being surrogate parents. And for those who are ultimately allowed to stay in this country, which is most of them because they are indeed refugees fleeing danger and oppression, eventually opening their homes. You know, it's not quite like the risks that Ellen Nielsen faced from the Nazis, but we face risks when we stand up to defend children. We face those who will cross their arms and give us the look. We know the look, don't we? Acting as though we're doing something wrong when we share love and peace and hope. We live in a broken world. It's been broken for a long time. And I don't expect that to change anytime soon. But like Shiphrah and Puah, when we live in that brokenness as people who build wholeness, we make a difference. Like Ellen Nielsen, we make a difference. Like those along our border who welcome children, we make a difference. What is it that you can do here in your own life that will make a difference? Each one of you, I know, has your own answer. I know some of you just yesterday were at the soup kitchen, caring for some of God's hungry people. I know this congregation engages in many activities that serve to rebuild a broken world. May you continue, and may you be blessed as you continue to find new ways of building wholeness, of working for peace, of transforming evil into good. May we, all of us, be transformed by the Spirit of God moving among us. May we stand firmly upon the rock that is our faith in Jesus, the Messiah, the Son of the living God. And may we live out that faith, working behind the scenes in ways that transform the world through God's love and forgiveness.